On the lead ship of the invading fleet, the enemy king stood at the helm, his posture relaxed, almost casual, as he watched Shadow Bay's vessels advance across the darkened waters. The dying moon framed his tall silhouette in pale silver, casting sharp contrasts along his features, yet revealing nothing of his thoughts. His expression was calm, too calm for a man standing on the brink of war. Two figures stood beside him. One was unmistakable, a towering warrior clad in blackened armour, its surface scarred and worn by countless battles. His massive sword rested at his side, a hand never straying far from its hilt. Every inch of him radiated restrained violence, like a blade waiting to be drawn. The other was far less imposing at first glance. Dressed in simple, unremarkable clothing, he was lean, almost forgettable, until one noticed the faint distortion in the air around him. A subtle, unnatural aura clung to his presence, as though reality itself bent slightly in his proximity. "My lord," the armoured warrior said at last, his voice low and edged with tension. "They will never allow us passage to the temple. Shadow Bay will burn itself to ash before they let us reach that cursed place." The invading king did not look away from the approaching fleet. A faint smile touched his lips, measured, deliberate. "Oh, I know," he replied smoothly. "I am counting on it." His eyes glinted with quiet anticipation. "Black Eye," he added calmly, "can you catch that arrow?" Without hesitation, the man in plain attire raised one hand. The arrow, still cutting through the night air, came to an abrupt halt. It froze mid-flight, suspended as if time itself had been seized. A faint shimmer rippled outward, barely visible, before the arrow slowly drifted forward and settled gently into Black Eye's open palm. The warrior in black said nothing, his gaze fixed on the display. Black Eye unfastened the parchment tied to the shaft and unfolded it with deliberate care. His eyes scanned the message once before he read aloud, his voice steady and emotionless. "You are seeking passage to a forbidden place. It is cursed to seek the weapon of Nymareans. You shall meet your doom here, or you can leave in peace." The warrior raised an eyebrow, his grip tightening around the hilt of his sword as the meaning of the message settled in. "Weapon of Nymareans?" he repeated, disbelief edging his voice as he turned toward his king. "The dark sword is here? That weapon was lost to time, nothing more than a myth whispered by historians and madmen." The invading king's smile deepened, slow and deliberate, though his eyes remained cold, calculating. "Legends rarely survive without reason," he said quietly, his gaze never leaving the horizon where Shadow Bay's fleet continued its advance. "The sword is real. It has always been real, and it lies hidden within the temple." He exhaled slowly, almost reverently. "Shadow Bay guards its secrets fiercely, but not perfectly. When the sword is ours, Nymareans' power will answer to me, and with it no wall, no army, no kingdom will stand in our way." The warrior's initial shock gave way to anticipation, a dangerous spark lighting his eyes. "And you believe Shadow Bay does not fully understand what they protect?" "Oh, they understand," the king replied with faint amusement. "That is precisely why they resist us so desperately. They know what the sword can do when wielded without restraint." Black Eye finally spoke, his voice calm as he folded the parchment and studied it once more. "They also know it is cursed, my lord. Entire armies have been driven to ruin by its influence. It is not merely a weapon. It consumes those who claim it. The king's expression hardened, his smile thinning. "Curses prey on doubt and weakness," he said dismissively. "I possess neither. The sword will bend, as all power does, to a stronger will. Shadow Bay fears what they cannot control. Soon that fear will be justified." Black-Eye slipped the message into his robes and turned his attention back to the approaching fleet, its sails now clearly visible against the dark sea. "Shall I give the order to attack, my lord?" "Not yet," the king replied, his tone smooth, measured. He stepped forward and rested his hands on the ship's railing, eyes narrowing. "Let them come closer. Let them believe they still command this battle." A pause, heavy and deliberate. "When the distance closes," he continued softly, "we will remind them why they should have let us pass in peace." Aboard the ships of Shadow Bay, the soldiers remained alert, eyes fixed on the dark silhouettes ahead. They stood ready, unaware of the strange magic already at work among their enemies, unaware that their message had never reached its intended hands. Yet the King of Shadow Bay, standing on the deck of his flagship, felt a growing unease coil in his chest. Something was wrong. He could sense it in the air, a subtle disturbance, like a fracture in the natural rhythm of the sea itself. His sharp gaze lingered on the enemy vessels, searching for signs of fear, movement, hesitation. Instead, he found only calm, too much calm. "Why do they not retaliate?" the king muttered under his breath. "They should have answered by now." His jaw tightened as realization crept in. "They're waiting," he said quietly, "waiting for something." A sudden gust of wind snapped through the sails, rippling across the water. For a brief moment, the world between the two fleets fell silent. No orders shouted, no oars splashing, only the creak of wood and the low murmur of the sea. Then, carried on the deep ocean breeze, the haunting song of freedom returned, twisting through the air with an unsettling harmony that sent a chill down his spine. The king felt it fully now, the heavy stillness that always came before destruction. "Prepare for the worst," he commanded, his voice steady despite the doubt pressing at his thoughts. "We show them no mercy." The ships continued their advance, the distance between the two fleets shrinking with every passing heartbeat. Both kings understood, though neither spoke it aloud. This was no longer a simple clash of steel and strategy. What lay ahead was a struggle for something far greater, something powerful enough to reshape the fate of kingdoms. Above the dark waters, the breeze from the deep ocean sang its haunting song of freedom once more, its melody weaving through the tension like a promise. Whatever storm was about to break, it would leave neither side unchanged. That is why, for 1,000 years, no one has dared to touch the seed of Globok, the invader king said, his voice low, deliberate and absolute. "We are not here for the sword of darkness. Touching that blade is nothing short of suicide. Any who grasp it suffer agony beyond endurance. Death is inevitable. Even proximity to the sword can be fatal." He paused, eyes narrowing with cold intent. "Neverus left his sword beside the crystal as a warning," he continued, "but we will claim the crystal regardless, one way or another." Then, without hesitation, he gave the order. "Send the Nymareans." Black-Eye stepped forward at once. His hands rose, fingers moving in precise fluid patterns as ancient magic bent to his will. The air shimmered around him. Beneath the fleet, the water began to glow faintly as a resonant pulse surged outward, rolling through the depths like a living heartbeat. Every ship trembled as the soundless wave passed beneath them, a low hum vibrating through wood and bone alike. Across the bay, the King of Shadow Bay stiffened. Something was wrong. The air felt heavier, charged with an unseen force. Soldiers exchanged uneasy glances as a strange melody drifted upward from the sea, soft, haunting, irresistibly beautiful. It coiled around their senses, pulling at their minds, urging them closer to the railings, closer to the water. Then the sea exploded. Without warning, jagged spears burst from the depths, impaling soldiers where they stood. Screams shattered the night as bodies fell, blood staining the decks. The king's heart thundered in his chest as chaos erupted before his eyes, swift and merciless. "My lord!" his right-hand man cried, panic cutting through his voice. "Creatures! There are creatures in the water attacking us!" The king's shock hardened instantly into fury. "Release the death rain!" he roared. A bowman stepped forward, his face grim with resolve. He drew, aimed, and loosed a flaming arrow toward the mountain ridges. The fire streaked through the darkness like a burning omen, striking its mark. In answer, the forest came alive. From the hidden ridges, thousands upon thousands of arrows descended in a single devastating wave, an unstoppable storm of death. Steel and flame rained down upon the invading ships, and the monstrous forms rising from the sea alike, turning the bay into a killing ground as Shadow Bay unleashed its most terrible secret. The battle had begun in earnest. Chaos erupted as half-human, half-fish creatures burst from the water, their grotesque forms glistening beneath the dying light. Scaled limbs hauled themselves onto the decks, webbed feet striking wood as they moved with terrifying speed. Spears flashed in their hands, striking with lethal precision. Around them, bodies, both human and Nymarean, floated lifelessly in the churning sea, grim remnants of the king's initial counterattack. But the tide of battle refused to settle. From the invaders' flagship, raw power ignited. A bolt of lightning tore through the sky, summoned by the enemy wizard's will. It arced downward with blinding force, colliding with the second and third waves of falling arrows. In an instant, steel and flame were reduced to smouldering ash, disintegrating mid-air before they could reach their mark. "My lord!" a soldier shouted, diving aside as burning fragments rained down. "We must retreat to the walls." "No!" the king roared, his voice cutting through the chaos. His eyes burned with unyielding resolve. "We hold this ground. Reinforce the front lines. Prepare for close combat." He watched as the Nymareans carved through his men, their movements fluid and relentless, slipping between strikes with unnatural agility. They fought as though the sea itself guided them, every motion precise, merciless. The battle was slipping toward disorder, but the king refused to yield. Turning to his right-hand man, his jaw set with iron resolve, he barked, "Gather the archers, prepare the harpoons, drive these creatures back. We defend our ships, or we lose everything." Orders echoed across the decks as soldiers regrouped, forcing themselves to stand amid blood-slicked planks and shattered wood. Above it all, the haunting melody from the water endured, no longer alluring but oppressive, entwining itself with the clash of steel, the screams of the wounded, and the thunder of the restless sea. The ships shuddered beneath the violence, the bay itself seeming to recoil as the struggle intensified. Both sides fought with the unspoken understanding that this was no ordinary battle. What was decided here would not merely claim lives, it would shape the fate of kingdoms.